Ready to unlock some serious willpower. Not like some cheesy life hack stuff, but the real deal, backed by neuroscience.
We're going deep today into a conversation between David Goggins, he's the ultra athlete, motivational speaker guy,
Yeah, intense dude.
yeah, and Dr. Andrew Huberman, neuroscientist.
Perfect combo.
Right. They're talking about this thing called the anterior mid-cingulate cortex.
ACC for short. But that sounds kind of intimidating.
Well, Dr. Huberman actually calls it the cookie monster of the brain.
Okay, Cookie Monster, now we're talking. So, what's this Cookie Monster all about, and what's it got to do with willpower?
So the ACC, it's a part of your brain, right? And it helps you make decisions, especially when it's about like doing things you'd rather not do.
Oh, I know those decisions well. Like choosing the salad when you really want a burger.
Exactly. Or getting up early to work out, facing those fears that make you want to hide.
So it's like the part of us that resists temptation helps us push out our comfort zone.
Yeah, that's it. And the really wild part is Dr. Huberman says this area actually gets physically bigger when we keep challenging it,
Wait, so the more we do hard stuff, the more this part of our brain grows.
like a muscle,
Uh,
gets stronger with exercise. And this isn't just like some theory. There's real science behind it.
So there's research showing a difference in the ACC for people who embrace challenge versus those who, well, don't.
Oh, yeah. Like they found the ACC is often smaller in people who struggle with obesity.
Interesting.
But then when they start making healthier choices, dieting, guess what? It starts growing.
That's pretty hopeful. Like, even if we have those struggles, overeating or procrastination, we can actually change our brains by making the tough choices consistently.
Absolutely. And it goes even further, the research. They found the ACC is larger in athletes, people who've overcome serious challenges, even people who live really long lives.
Whoa, a strong ACC connected to longevity. That's mind-blowing.
Right. And this all ties in perfectly with David Goggins' whole philosophy, right?
Yeah.
Pushing beyond your limits, embracing the suck, he calls it.
Goggins is known for taking on some crazy challenges, so I guess his ACC must be pretty jacked.
He's living proof that pushing yourself consistently, physically and mentally, leads to huge growth and resilience. And what's fascinating is his philosophy totally aligns with the neuroscience.
So this isn't just motivational fluff. There's real science behind how our brains work.
Exactly. They're both saying, Goggins and Dr. Huberman, that there are no shortcuts to building willpower. It's about consistently doing the hard things, even when you want to take the easy way out.
So are we saying everyone should go run ultramarathons or do Navy SEAL training?
Not necessarily. It's more about finding what challenges you personally.
Gotcha. So for some people, it might be resisting that extra cookie. For others, it might be speaking up in a meeting.
Exactly. It's recognizing that those uncomfortable moments, the sucky stuff, those are the keys to building that willpower muscle.
Makes me think about all the things I avoid because they feel tough or scary. Maybe those are the exact things I need to lean into if I want to grow.
That's the idea. And what's encouraging is, Dr. Huberman points out, everybody has an ACC. The potential for willpower is in all of us.
So it's not like some people are born with it and others aren't. We all have the capacity to develop it.
Yeah, and maybe, like Goggins says, that's what a lot of people are missing, that sense of purpose and self-discovery that comes from pushing ourselves, seeing what we're truly capable of.
I'm so curious to hear more about how this cookie monster part of our brain actually works. What are the specific things that happen as we develop willpower?
Oh, Dr. Huberman goes into some really cool detail about the neuroscience behind it. He talks about this concept called neuroplasticity, which is basically the brain's ability to change based on what we experience. But we'll get into all that after the break.
Okay, I'm on the edge of my seat. Back in a moment to unpack the science of how our brains rewire themselves for greater willpower. Stay tuned.
So before the break, we were talking about the cookie monster, the ACC, and how it actually works. And it all comes down to neuroplasticity.
All right, neuroplasticity. Refresh my memory on that one.
It's like basically the brain's ability to rewire itself based on what we experience.
Oh, right. Right.
For a long time, scientists thought, your brain was pretty much fixed after a certain age. But now we know that's totally wrong.
So it's not like we're stuck with the brain we're born with. Pretty cool.
Yeah, it's always changing and adapting throughout our lives.
So every time we learn something new or pick up a new habit or even just have a new experience, our brain is physically changing.
Exactly. That's the whole idea. And this is where the ACC and willpower come in. When we constantly challenge ourselves to do things that are hard, we're basically strengthening those neural connections in the ACC.
Making it more powerful.
Exactly. More robust and efficient.
So willpower isn't just some vague mental force. There are actual physical changes happening in our brains as we develop it.
You got it. And Dr. Huberman explains that this whole neuroplasticity thing is driven by something called synaptic pruning.
Synaptic pruning. Okay, that sounds kind of
It
intense.
does, right? But it's a good thing, actually.
Okay, well, that's good to hear. But what exactly is being pruned?
So basically, our brains are always making new connections between neurons,
Synapses.
right? Synapses. But not all of those connections are useful or efficient. So synaptic pruning is like getting rid of the weaker connections, kind of like when you trim a bush to make it stronger.
So by challenging ourselves, we're basically forcing our brains to get rid of those weaker connections and focus on the ones that matter most for willpower.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. It's like we're sculpting our own brains, shaping them to be more resilient and capable.
That's an amazing visual. Makes me wonder, are there like specific types of challenges that are better at triggering this neuroplasticity in the ACC?
That's a good question. And Dr. Huberman actually touches on that. He says challenges that combine physical and mental effort, those tend to be the most impactful.
So like training for a marathon, for example. You're pushing yourself physically, but also mentally to stay disciplined and focused.
Exactly. Or it could be something like learning a new language or mastering a difficult skill. The key is that it requires effort and focus over time.
This all goes back to Goggins's philosophy of embracing the suck. It's not just about like suffering for no reason. It's about choosing challenges that push us beyond our comfort zone and force our brains to adapt.
Yeah, Goggins even talks about callousing the mind, which is basically making your mind tougher by exposing it to discomfort.
So we're basically training our minds to become tougher, more adaptable, less bothered by challenges.
Exactly. And the more we do that, the stronger our ACC gets and the more willpower we have available to us.
This is all starting to make a lot of sense. But I'm also wondering, is there a downside to like constantly pushing ourselves? Could we overdo it and actually hurt our brains?
That's a really good question, and Dr. Huberman does say we should be careful about going to extremes. He talks about balance and listening to your body.
So it's not about pushing yourself to the point of burnout.
Right. It's about finding that sweet spot where you're challenging yourself enough to, trigger that neuroplasticity, but also giving yourself enough rest and recovery.
It's like with physical training, you need to give your muscles time to recover after a workout. It sounds like the same thing applies to our brains.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Dr. Huberman even suggests doing things like yoga nidra or meditation to help you relax and recover better.
So it's not just about pushing harder, it's also about doing things that help our brains to like chill out and de-stress.
Exactly. And Goggins actually talks about this too. In his own way, he calls it self-regulation. Being aware of your limits, knowing when to push and when to back off.
Yeah, you can't pour from an empty cup, right? If we're constantly pushing without giving ourselves time to recharge, we're going to burn out.
For sure. And when we burn out, our willpower disappears anyway.
So that balance is key.
Balance is everything between challenge and recovery, pushing our limits and giving ourselves space to recharge.
Okay, so we've talked about the science of willpower, the ACC, and this balance between challenge and recovery. But how do we actually use all this in our daily lives?
Yeah, that's the big question, right? Putting it all into practice. Well, luckily, both Goggins and Dr. Huberman have some really good tips that anyone can start using.
Okay, so we've dug into the science of willpower, learned about that cookie monster part of our brain, and how challenges can actually rewire it to be stronger.
And we've talked about that balance, pushing ourselves, but also respecting our need to recover. But now I'm kind of wondering, how do we actually put this into practice? It feels like a bit overwhelming.
Yeah, it's one thing to understand it, but it's a whole other thing to actually, make it happen in our lives.
Totally. Luckily, Goggins and Dr. Huberman, they both offer some really practical stuff that, anyone can use. One of the big things they both talk about is setting clear goals.
That makes sense, having a target. But does it have to be some massive life-changing goal? That's already kind of scary.
Not at all. It can be anything, really, that motivates you. Goggins talks about having this, like, burning desire,
Yeah.
something you're truly passionate about. But Dr. Huberman, he also reminds us to break those big goals down into smaller steps, make them manageable.
Okay, so a big picture vision, but then like bite-sized actions.
Yeah.
Makes it seem less overwhelming.
Right. And they both talk about accountability, too.
Mm.
Having that support system, whether it's a friend, a coach, or even like just a journal to track your progress, they can be huge.
I can see how having someone to cheer you on or even just hold you accountable would help you stay on track.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Goggins even says, like, just the act of writing down your goals and looking at them regularly can be a really powerful thing.
Like making a contract with yourself.
Yeah, putting it out there. And it helps you see those patterns of, self-sabotage, avoidance, all that.
Yeah.
Like, are you always making excuses, procrastinating on certain things?
Oh, yeah. Guilty as charged sometimes.
Well, being aware of that is the first step, right?
Uh,
And that's where willpower comes in. It's using those cookie monster muscles, overriding those, like, automatic impulses.
So instead of giving in to that urge to scroll social media or hit snooze, we flex that willpower and choose the thing that aligns with our goals.
Exactly. It's about those small, consistent choices that over time make the big changes happen.
This is making me think about my own habits, my routines. Are there, like, any other specific strategies they recommend for getting that willpower stronger?
Oh, yeah. Dr. Huberman, he talks about this technique called non-sleep deep rest, NSDR for short.
NSDR. That sounds kind of interesting. What's that all about?
It's basically a way to get your brain into this, like, deep relaxation state, like when you're asleep but you're actually awake. Things like yoga nidra, or even just lying down, focusing on your breath for like 10, 20 minutes. It can be super powerful.
A power nap for your brain.
That's a good way to put it. And Dr. Huberman says even a few minutes of this NSDR a day, it can help you with stress, improve how your brain works, even boost that willpower.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. So we're not just talking about pushing harder all the time. It's also about giving our brains that time to, like, rest and recover.
Right. It's all about that balance we talked about, right? Between effort and recovery, pushing those limits, but also giving ourselves space to recharge.
This has been such a cool deep dive. I feel like I get willpower in a whole new way now.
Me too. And remember, this is just the start. The real magic is when we take this knowledge and actually put it to work.
So to our listener, what's one thing you can do this week? One small step to start using that willpower muscle.
Could be setting a small goal, finding an accountability buddy, even just trying a 5-minute NSDR, anything like that.
Yeah.
Make it something achievable, something you can actually commit to and something that gets you closer to the life you want to be living.
We're rooting for you every step of the way. You've got this power inside you to do some seriously incredible stuff. And it all starts with that first step, with that choice to, embrace the challenge and unlock your potential.
So go out there and show that cookie monster who's boss.
And tell us how it goes. Let us know on social media what you're working on. We want to hear all about your willpower journey.